Most of us have had that experience of getting to the end of the school year and realizing there is no possible way you're going to finish one or maybe more than one subjects. So today, let's chat about what you're going to do now to avoid making it a very last minute decision. Some of us, myself included, have had that experience. And when we get to the end of the year and we are trying to figure it out, then we have to make a decision. What are we going to keep? How are we going to finish it? Save it for the next year, keep going this year, whatever. All the while, a little script going in your brain about how if you were a better homeschool mom, then it wouldn't have happened. Or good homeschool moms stay on top of it. But that's not what we're going to go through, because what's done is done. If there was something that you did that resulted in your family or your homeschool being behind, well, it's done. Can't change it now. And if you didn't, and life just happened, or things went at a slower pace than what you expected or whatever, again, you can't change it. The first thing I will say is I'm specifically talking about elementary and middle school students. If you have a high school student, you got three options. 1, get it done, figure out a plan to get it done. 2, move it to next year. Or 3, get it off the transcript and off the course descriptions. Because if you don't, then you're lying about what your student did. Or you can adjust it. So if they're only going to get half semester instead of a full year, adjust it on the transcript. But for the other 8 years, 9 years, whatever, 10 years of homeschooling, whatever you're doing beforehand, there's got a variety of options. And so let's talk about what those really look like. My first thing to you would be, is it a core class or is it not a core class? Core classes meaning math, history, English. Not a core class meaning something like coding or art, that sort of thing. If it's a core class, is it a class that they're going to need to build on for next year? 4th grade math builds on 3rd grade math. 5th grade math builds on 4th grade math. However, if you have a 2nd grader and you're doing U.S. history this year, well, they've got a lot of years where they're going to learn more U.S. history. So, if it's a core class and it's going to build for next year, then you need to make sure to complete at least, something like math, I would say aim for at least 85% of the book. Generally speaking, math programs at the beginning have some built-in review for the last year, but it's review. So it's not going to necessarily be as thorough or as much practice. And it assumes that your student has had it and they just need a refresh. So you don't want to rely on that to teach the skills that they're missing this year. However, if you finish 85 to 90% of a book, you're probably going to be fine. For something like math, my goal, honestly, is to finish 100% of it. But 100% of it well. I used to know someone who, for like the 3-4 years that I knew them when we were stationed together, every year they ended up with math not being complete. And she was so determined to make sure it all got completed that the last month of school and maybe into the summer, they were doing 3 or 4 math lessons a day. That is completing it to mark it off and say that you're done. That is not completing it to master it. You know what? Let me also say this. If you have a math program like Saxon teaching textbooks where there's a lot of spiral review, that one I would, again, this is going to be your comfort level and whatever, but 100% is not something I would aim for at that point if you're falling behind. we from elementary are using Beast Academy, which is a mastery program. So there's not as much built-in review as you're going, and each chapter has its own topic. So if we only finished 80%, for example, that's basically, well, for Beast Academy, there's 4 books in a year on a level. So it'd be like 3 books and then started a 4th. Well, that means we've lost, or we haven't done 2 full chapters. That's a big chunk. So this will depend on what you're doing. That said, just recently on Facebook, I commented about how much I use my hands. It's true. I use my hands a lot. So I'm trying to be a little more conscious of that, but as you can see, I really do. So if I cannot finish math well, or to whatever percentage I'm aiming for, and do it well this school year, I'm going to push it to next year. If you, at this point, it's nearly the end of April, if you've only finished maybe 50% of the book or 60% of the book, you're not going to get completed, realistically. So acknowledge that. Okay? Whatever happened. Make a plan. And in that case, I would move it to next year. As much, I would work at pick up my pace now, move the rest to next year, whatever that looks like. For something like U.S. history with a 2nd or 3rd grader, for sure, elementary, 5th grader, 6th grader even, I would not push to complete it necessarily. Now, if you're close on whatever subject, if you are just a wee bit behind, a couple of weeks behind, pick up the pace, go for it. But generally I'm speaking about those ones that you're just not going to be able to accomplish or to complete well in the school year. Something like U.S. history, what your student learns as a 2nd grader, they're really not. When I had all young kids, I felt like it was really important for them to learn it now so you'd have a good foundation. Well, yes, foundations are important, but honestly, what they're learning then, they're going to be fine, I promise, if you don't finish it. For the other things, art, for example, keep at the pace you're going, pace you've been doing, if you're enjoying it. Maybe a little bit more if you wanted, but honestly, something like that, I would just plan to carry over into the next year. You don't want to get to the point where you are doing so much just to mark it off as done that those things you're enjoying, you become feeling like drudgery to you because you're just trying to mark it off. That doesn't do anybody any good at all, other than for that sense of satisfaction that said you did all the lessons. And I've been there. I have felt like that's what I needed to do because I'm a good homeschool mom who gives my kids a strong education. Well, you know what? Then my kids got older and life happens, and I realized how much that was just about pride for myself and not about what's best for my kids or my homeschool or for me. If you have something like art and you're not enjoying it, but you feel like you should do it because you committed to it, well, honestly, it's okay. It is okay to just let it trail off. There's so many great things out there. Why continue with something that you're not enjoying? Just because you said you were going to. I've been there, and there's no use. Like, there are so many fantastic things out there. That's my side topic, but that's my rule with my kids, is that for reading, you give it 3 chapters or 50 pages, whichever one comes first. And if it's still not good, we're going to move on, because there are too many great books out there to read. So if you're not enjoying one, let's find one that you will. Okay, so if it's a core class, is it something they need for next year? If so, make a plan and figure out how and when you're going to finish it, even if that means moving it to next year. If it's a core class but they don't need it for next year, make a plan to cover what you can well, and then let the rest drip. Go through, if you're doing a science this year, look at the rest of the chapters and see which ones strike you as the most interesting and choose some of those. If you have a bunch of science activities, look at them, ask your kids which ones they want to do, complete those. It will be fine, I promise. Now, one more caveat. If you have a middle school student who will next year be going in high school, I would be careful about what you're choosing to keep and what not to keep. Math, again, you want to do at least most of it. If you have a student who's already working at like an algebra, you for sure want to do it well, because next year, probably geometry, 2 years, they'll be doing algebra 2. And at that point, that builds on what they already have, and some will have a decent review, but not thorough. So you definitely don't want, let's say, a 2-year gap between Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, where Algebra 1 wasn't completed. So now, what are you going to do? You guys know that I like to make sure I give you something actionable on how you can take what I've said and go forward with it. So, you're going to take a piece of paper, across the top you're going to put how many weeks you have left, or how many school days you have left. You may come back and adjust that when you're done, but for now, how many days it is. And then you're going to list each child so they have their own column. Now, this is going to sound like it's going to take a while. It will not. Trust me, but it's an important step. I want you to grab each of their subjects and make a list of how many more lessons they have, or how many more days of work, however yours is divided up. You're going to do that for each thing, each child, each subject. Okay? And only the things that you're behind on, really. That's what I would do. And then you're going to look at that and compare it to how many days you have left across the top of the paper. And you're going to figure out how many lessons or days of work you need to do to get it done. If it is more than twice the pace that you've been doing, you're not going to finish it. Realistically, whatever has caused you to be behind probably isn't going to change enough in the next month, 6 weeks, to make a sizable difference. And I say that with no judgment. We have had complications. If you follow me on Facebook, you probably know, I think I've talked about it on my email list too. And the spring has not looked like what we thought it was going to look like. So I say that with no judgment at all. But what has got us behind in some things isn't clearing up enough in the next month to make any kind of a difference in getting us completely caught up before the end of the year. And it's probably the truth for you as well. If for math you've been doing 3 lessons a week, you're realistically probably not going to be able to complete 6 lessons a week. Realistically, you're not. Like, if you could now, then you probably could have in the past, and you would have been. So then you're going to go through and you're going to make a list. Figure out what you want to do, what you don't want to do, and just cross it off. If it's not going to be done, cross it off with freedom. I'm giving you that permission. 5 more minutes. I'm giving you the permission to do that, okay? Cross it off and be done. If you can't complete it all, but you're going to keep working, go through and figure out what you want to do and what you're not going to do. And again, what you're not going to do, say goodbye with no regret. Okay. So what else do I do at the end of the year? I have a blog post that I'm going to link down there, and a printable pack for you where I go through some of the things that I do to end the year strong and prepare myself for next year. Check it out down there. I'll see you in the next video.